Hello again, it's Tuppence. I've recently been able to play with a laser cutter and I've created this design and managed to cut it out. And now I'm going to use that with some UV resin to create a shelf sitter. But first I need to seal the back piece with some paint. I've got this wood and metal paint, it's white and satin, and I've just put that into a spice jar. So I'm going to put some gloves on, protect my hands. It is a water-based paint, so it is washable, but I might as well protect myself. And these are comically huge gloves, but they'll do the job. I'm going to apply the paint with a sponge. So I'm just going to dip that in, and then I'll sort of dab and brush this on. I just need to make sure that this is coated, and this is mostly for aesthetics. I'm not actually going to be putting any UV resin on this back piece, but I will on the front piece, and that is more important that that becomes sealed with paint. Any of the exposed wood is going to have air pockets in it, and that will release bubbles into my UV resin, and then I'll just end up with a mess. So I will take that out to my shed and then I can spray paint that. I'm just going to use a paintbrush here and try and get into the side. The sides of the wood are slightly charred from the laser. That's just what happens when lasers cut. And I figure it'd look much nicer if I can paint them white as well. Just take off some of that dark edge. So I will carry on doing this, and I'll be back once I've got both of these pieces painted. Alright, he is now all painted with a primer, and that has got pretty much all of the edges. Looks like it has got all of the edges, and that was much easier to do with a spray paint than with a brush. But I haven't painted the back, and that's because I'm going to be applying some varnish. I'm going to want to put some bezel tape on the back of this. You could just glue this directly to this piece and then fill in the UV resin. That would just be a shelf sitter, and you have a little stand that goes on the back. I don't actually think that's the stand, but I can't decide whether I want to use this piece or whether I want this to be a window catcher. So I am going to put some bezel tape on the back of this, and that will allow me to fill in my UV resin, and then I can decide whether I want to make it a shelf sitter or a sun catcher. The first step is to apply some varnish. That's going to make sure that the back is nice and smooth, because some of the wood is a little bit rough. It's also got a bit of paint on it. If I get a nice smooth surface, the bezel tape will stick to that much easier, and then I shouldn't have any leaks. So I'm going to go ahead and probably give this a couple of coats. And as it's an acrylic varnish and it's water-based, I can apply it with my finger, which I found a lot easier. It also dries really quickly, about 15 minutes, and then I can recoat this. So I'll be back when this is all done. Alright, this is all dried out. It's had 2 coats, and you can see how shiny and smooth that is. I'm going to be using some bezel tape on the back of this. In the past I have used other things like contact paper or the transfer paper that you get for things like the Cricut. However, they're not really designed for the job, and they can cause problems. They can wrinkle under the heat, they can leave some residue. So I'm going to use something that is designed for this express purpose. And as you can see, this is not going to be big enough to cover the whole piece, so I'm going to have to overlap this and layer it. So 3 pieces should be enough, and just put that here, and then no, actually there's a little bit of the hat at the top that is not covered, so I do need to make 3 full-size pieces, and then I can overlap that and make sure that everything is pressed down. I'm going to try not to get my fingers all over the front, because it will leave finger marks, but you're not going to really see them, as I'm going to be colouring my UV resin. In fact, I'm going to show you multiple different ways that you can colour UV resin. Right, so that's the last piece in place. Now I do want to make sure that this is thoroughly pushed down. As I say, I don't want to get my fingers in there if I can help it. So I'm just pushing on top of the wood pieces. Make sure that that is all in contact, especially where it is overlapping. Right, I've actually got this flat box. I'm going to use that. I'm going to push down and make sure that is well stuck. Okay, before I start to fill this with UV resin, I'm just going to snip these pieces at the bottom and fold them over, because I keep catching my gloves on them, and because they're sticky, I'm just sticking to them all the time. So if I fold that over, That gives me a place to hold that isn't going to be sticky. I'm going to do the other side as well. Just want to make sure that I am not covering over any of the areas that I need to fill. Okay, press those down. There we go. So now I need to mix up my UV resin. I'm going to be using craft UV resin, and for this one I'm going to colour this with a UV nail gel. I've got a black, and I love using this to create black UV resin. Even though it's a really strong black colour, it still cures. So when you dilute it with a little bit of UV resin, you still get a really strong black, and it cures like a dream. Okay, going to mix that together and make sure that I scrape up all of that black nail gel off the bottom of the cup, and it mixes into the UV resin really well. Alright, I'm going to be using a micro brush stick. I've pulled the little fuzzy end off of it, and I find that's the best thing. It's a really nice pointy end, and I need very little to fill up any of these spaces. So I'm just going to add it a drop at a time. Make sure that I get it to coat the bottom and that it touches all of the wooden frame all the way around. That way I won't have any holes. So I'm going to do this in a couple of layers. Once I've got the bottom coated, I'm going to use the torch, and I'll temporarily cure this so that I can fill in all of the other spaces with the black, and then I'll put it underneath my dual-sided resin curing lamp and cure it for 5 minutes. That first layer is partially cured. I'm going to add a little bit more, but I'm going to keep it below the level of the frame. I want this to look a little bit like it's enamelled. Now I can put some in the belt. This is speeded up a little bit, otherwise it'll be very boring, and I've dropped a bit on the frame, so I'm just going to wipe that off with a paper towel before I cure this. So I'm going to carry on. I'll leave this speeded up, pop a bit of music on, and you can watch me fill these spaces. Okay, before I continue filling this up, I've forgotten one important thing, and that is that I wanted this frame to be gold. So I'm going to have to use this chrome marker, a gold chrome marker from J. Diction, to go over the top. If I had had a gold spray paint, I could have saved myself this step by spraying and sealing this using the gold paint. But I had to use what I had, and this will do the same job. It just means a little bit more work for me. But now is the time to do this before I fill this up with any more resin. This marker is designed to go on resin, so I want to make sure that I get this applied so that I don't get anything on any of the bits that are in the frame. I will carry on doing this, and I will spare you that. I'll be back once this has had a chance to dry, and I can assess whether I need to give it a couple of coats or not. Okay, the frame is now all gold and it's dry, and I've given the black a second layer, and now I'm going to use some glitter to colour my resin. So I'm going to add a little bit of UV resin into my cup first, and then I can put the glitter on top. And the glitter is going to be the only thing that is going to impart the colour. I'm not adding any kind of alcohol ink or anything like that. So I need to put a decent amount in. And then I can mix that in, and as long as I can see a good gold colour and not the clear resin in between, that should be fine. That looks still liquid enough, it isn't a paste. Alright, so now I'm going to do the same thing and apply this. The only thing I need to be wary of is that I do have to keep stirring this regularly so that I get that glitter mixed up, because it will tend to sink into the bottom of the cup. So again, I'm going to speed this up and pop some music on. Alright, I have coloured my resin with a black UV nail gel and some gold glitter, and now I'm going to use an epoxy resin dye. This is the bright red from Let's Resin. I'm going to start with 1 drop because you don't want to use too much, otherwise it can stop your UV resin from curing. So I'll put some in my cup and then I'm going to mix this in, make sure that I've got no streaks and it's all one uniform colour. Okay, that's looking nice, but I'm going to add a little bit of this red glitter and that'll pep it up. It is Christmas after all. I'm going to be doing exactly the same and filling in the areas that I want, and I'll be curing this as I go along, as these are going to be quite large areas and they're also spaced across the whole of the Nutcracker. So I'm going to put the music on again and speed this up. Okay, now I need to do the hair and the teeth, and that's going to give me a chance to use my 4th method, which is a mica powder. This is a mica powder that combines glitter. It's called Dazzling Diamonds, and did you see the way that that popped off? That was almost a little bit of Christmas magic there. I'm going to put a good scoop in here. I've only got a little bit of UV resin in this, and I can always mix up more as I go along. I don't want to have too much. So make sure that that powder is all mixed in. And then again, it's going to be back on with the music. All that's left now is the face and the hands and the nose. And so I'm going to mix a little bit of the colours that I've already made to create a pink. I'll add some more resin to the cup with the white mica in it. And then I can take some of the red that I've already mixed up and add that until I get a pink colour. Despite my best efforts sealing it, I did have a bubble come up here. So I'm using my electric file to grind that down so that I can make it flat, and then I can recoat this surface and you'll never know it's there. But that just goes to show that I didn't really seal it properly. There might have been an area on the side of the frame that didn't get any paint covering it. Okay, the lump is removed. I'm just going to recoat this with the red and cure that again. And now that it's all done, I can take the bezel tape off the back. It's looking pretty clean. I don't have any major leaks, just a little bit down the bottom, but all in all it's good. So I'm going to peel this off the back, keeping that flat to the table so that I don't bend the frame or the resin. And this is pretty good bezel tape. It doesn't tend to leave any residue, but if it did, I could wipe that off with a little bit of alcohol and a baby wipe. But it came away nice and clean, so I don't need to. Now this is ready to go. All it needs is a ribbon through the top if you want to use it as a sun catcher, and then it can hang in the window and you'll let the light through it. But I'm not going to use it like that. This is going to be a shelf sitter because it is a decent size. I'm going to glue this onto that back piece, and I really like the way that that looks. It looks like it's been enamelled, which is kind of the look I was going for. I'm going to use some super glue to stick this. This is from Green Stuff World, and I just need to put a few dabs throughout the piece, preferably on the frame, and not quite as much as came out there. I'm going to add drops in strategic places, making sure that I cover it from top to bottom. And then I can hold up the two pieces, line them up and hold them together. The glue does stick quickly, so I want to make sure that I've got that lined up, and then I can lay it flat on the table and apply a little bit of pressure to make sure that it bonds. Okay, that's all stuck now, and I'm not going to be using this to hang up, so I want to cover that up. I've got these gems, and I think it would make a pretty cool emblem on the top of his hat, like a badge. So these come on a roll, and they're all joined together with little links of cotton that is moulded into them. So I'm just going to snip that off. Okay, this has a small bowl in the middle, and I'm going to fill that with the UV resin that's the same as I used for his uniform. So I just need to put a couple of drops in there. In fact, probably one drop. It's pretty small. And then I'll pop this underneath the lamp to cure, and then I can stick that over that hole on his hat. Again, I'm going to use a little bit of that super glue. So I'll put some on the frame, and then I can hold that gem in place. All that's left is to add the support. So I'm going to apply some of that same glue along this edge. This should line up with a little notch that's along the bottom of the piece. So I'll just put that in place. I'm going to hold both of them against the table so that they're square. And I'll keep this pressed until that glue has set. As you can see, it isn't straight, but it is flat to the bottom, and it does still work as a support. So I'm going to use the UV bonding resin to add a little bit of extra strength along the sides. It's a very thin area that is stuck onto that body, so I want to make sure that it's got more strength and support. So I'm going to add this down along the crease where it joins, and then I can set this in place. And I'll do that on each side. Okay, this is it. He's all done. I think he's super cute. He stands up really well. He's very sparkly, very Christmassy, and I love it. Now this is entirely possible to be done without the aid of a laser. You could use something like a Cricut and create a paper frame. You cut it multiple times. You just need to make sure you cut it large enough that it can handle all the small pieces. You glue the frames together, you varnish the whole thing, and then you can fill it with UV resin. I have done that multiple times before. I will leave links to those videos below if you're interested in finding out how. So you could make one just using a Cricut, but if you've got access to a laser, it is super cute. I will also leave a link for this file in my description box below. If you've liked this, please give me a thumbs up. Please comment, share if you can, and subscribe if you haven't. It is free to you and you will really help my channel, and you'll be able to come back and see what I'm going to make next time. Till then, thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye.